How's it going, YouTube? Coming today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be where to hand trap. Now, this is a series that I love doing, and thank you all so much for the support on the channel. I've been in and out of making videos lately because I just got a huge promotion. I did end up getting it, which is amazing. I'm working a lot on that right now, but I'm also trying to focus my energy back toward Yu-Gi-Oh as well. So let's make sure that we go through a very needed where to hand trap for the new format that we're currently in. So, if you haven't already checked out my sponsors, they're on Gem, Cloud, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, RW, MainPhaze, or Grimoire. Definitely go ahead and do so all down below in the description. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so we can hit our goal at 30,000. Thank you all for the support, and let's hop right into where to hand trap. So instead of doing like pure Mitsu and then pure Yummy separately, I'm just doing Mitsu Yummy together, because this will give you a very good idea of what you need to be doing in both matchups anyways. This can slightly vary, and we'll talk about the variations while I go through the slide, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty standard as far as what you see here. So, if you're dealing with a Mirakumo that just got tributed by like a prayer, you want to make sure that you are going to go ahead and use like DD Crow, or if your opponent used like Purification and tributed the Mirakumo, that you're using something like Bell to make sure that it stays in grave. These are going to be really crucial when it comes to dealing with this deck because of the fact that Mirakumo is such a house. Whether you're playing against Pure or you're playing against Mitsu Yummy, you want to make sure that you are dealing with Mirakumo. If you do see Metal Marcher hit the board with other synchros on the board, this is when you want to drop Rock. This is going to be the step before making a Herald, and that is going to be something that you do not want to happen. So make sure that you are dropping Rock on Metal Marcher. Not only is this really good against Pure Yummy, it's also good against Mitsu Yummy, because a lot of times your opponent is going to make the Herald, and then they're going to go ahead and get rid of the Herald to get to the Habakiri, unless they already have their Mitsu line up and going. So that's another thing where if they have like the Link 1 on board, that they can still tag into a Herald, and then you'll just go ahead and nib the Herald anyways at resolution. But at the same point, you're not dealing with a Omni Negate Floodgate as well. So both are very good options. Regardless, Nibiru into this matchup can be very strong still. Delta, I feel like, is a card that you have to be just playing in your side deck right now. It's too good. Mitsurugi's around, so you want to make sure that you have something to answer Mitsurugi Ritual. So having Delta is going to be really crucial to your sideboard right now. You should be on 3 Delta, 1 Gamma, and Driver, because this card is just that good. You also have Ash here. Ash is going to be really good for Saji. If your opponent goes Habakiri effect, most times you're going to be like, yeah, that's fine. Let them go summon, treat Saji, and then Ash Saji. There are times going second where you could get punished. Let's say that you have a board already and they're going second. They go Habakiri, summon Aramasa, tribute Aramasa, search Wosu. At that point, you're like, well, I probably should have just hit the Habakiri. But even at that point, if they go summon the Aramasa and then tribute Aramasa, know that the next play is probably search Wosu, so you probably want to go ahead and Ash that unless you don't necessarily care about Wosu and you're waiting for something like Saji, right? So something just to keep in mind as well. You also have Ogre for Minion, which is really powerful. Of course, this card is going to lead to a lot of damage, but I think the other thing that you really want to keep in mind is that if your opponent is comboing and then you catch them at a weird spot where you have like a Veiler or an Imperium for something like a Snatchy effect to go ahead and quick synchro, you can then go ahead and Ogre the Snatchy to make sure that your opponent stops playing right at that point, which can be really strong. It really depends though, because a lot of times if you're really good with the deck, you usually maintain 2 Snatchies just for those situations alone. The last one here is going to be just Veiler Imperium onto Cupsy. It's really less good to hit the Cupsy Yummy way with something like Ash. I'd rather just hit Saji in this matchup. If you're playing against the Pure variant, I still almost would want to just hit Cupsy instead of the way, just because of the fact that you want to cut off the access to Surprise since it's such a big interruption. A lot of times if they have a lot of bodies and they're just going through their normal line, you have a board to deal with, right? You have like Snatchy and Herald, but they don't get too surprised because most lists are only playing 1 right now. So if you cut that off from Cupsy, unless they hard open it, that's a major card that you don't have to worry about. So I definitely like interacting with Cupsy over the Yummy way, just because I feel like you get more value and a lot easier time breaking a board than you would otherwise. Now we have K9 Crystron. So I actually retweeted something that I posted back in July on Twitter, and it's about the artifact lock. Now, how do you stop the artifact lock? And there's going to be ample ways to do that with hand traps. Now, you're going to need 2 hand traps, and it's going to vary on how you sequence those hand traps. So, you can open any 2 of these 4 hand traps to stop this from happening. So, if your opponent has the artifact in grave, before they use Princess, you want to go ahead and use a Bestial or DD Crow and target the artifact. A lot of times your opponent will use Ripper to try to protect the artifact, which you will then chain nib, and you'll clean the entire board without your opponent being able to use Princess. You could go wait for Princess effect, Bell, they Ripper, you chain Crow or a Bestial, and you have the combinations that you have to open here to make sure that this does work in your favor. But again, if you want to use Nibiru, you want to make sure that you're using a Bestial before the Princess is activated. Ashing the Graveyard effect of Tristaros is really strong. This does cut off access to Infinity, unless their hand's just like crazy and it worked out really well for them. You could stop like a Smiger and Grave in case you want to just cut them off fully from their combo if that's all they have and that's all you saw. But hitting the Graveyard effect of Tristaros is really powerful, because not only are they blowing up their Synchro, they're also losing the Tristaros and Grave, and they're not getting the Tristaros back on board from the Synchro. So, things to really keep in mind. This is a really strong play. I like Ogre on Plat Gadget because it has to summon to the arrow it points to. So if you Ogre this, they're not going to be able to get to their Recycler, but at the same point, they might already have a Ripper. So again, Ogre is going to be a 1+ hand trap. You need that plus something else. Cluster is always going to be my favorite hit with Ogre, though, just because the card is so strong, and being able to just go ahead and just Ogre it is so free. Then last but not least, Valor Imperium on Roy is going to be very strong moving forward. For Dracotail, this hasn't really changed a whole lot. You'll go ahead and target the target of Urgula. So how it will resolve is Urgula will go back to deck, and then the target will get banished. So like a Famina that they target will go ahead and get banished, and then they'll lose the Urgula in their graveyard. It's very strong. You cut off a lot of resources. The other one is Delta onto Rahu. I would say Ketu, but if you have no monsters on board, I would wait until they use Ketu, which is usually always before Rahu, unless their hands are awkward and they use Rahu first. It's usually Ketu, then Rahu, and then I'm going to be throwing Delta at Rahu every time, because this will cut off the access to the trap cards, because this is usually like the second fusion. And Bell or Ash onto any of the trap cards. Flame or Sting, usually if you're playing like Mitsurugi, you want to hit Sting or Flame. Some decks really care, like Yummy will really care about Horn, so you just got to decide which one's more important to you, and go ahead and use Bell or Ash to stop this. And I think that's going to be really impactful, as if I ever open like Bell Ash like I did this past weekend, I normally Yummy Monster, my opponent flipped Horn, I chained Bell, and then my opponent used Flame on, I think it was my minion after, and then I chained Ash, and I was like, you know, that's the game. So it's pretty good. It's something you want to do. The Valor Imperium onto Lucius is always going to be the best bet here. The normal summon stop is always going to be really strong. Nibiru is always going to be one of those cards that is really good, and it's going to really depend on what you see out of your opponent and what kind of extension your opponent has as far as going past the normal play lines. But talking more so about direct hand trap spots, the first one that I really like is going to be a Bell onto a Bestial. We're seeing Maliss lists have a lot more Bestials in the deck because you're reliant more on seeing a Maliss name and a Bestial. Normal summon a Maliss name, make Lingeribo, use a Bestial, and then banish the name, and then go ahead and combo from there. So I definitely think that going ahead and using Bell onto a Bestial when they start trying to do that can be detrimental. It's something that can actually just be past turn. And the deck is really awkward to combo with now with no Splash Mage, and you just have Haggard now. So definitely very bad on the recovery side as well. You can also Bell the field spell, but I do like hitting the Bestial if you start seeing them go for that kind of a line. You could Ash the White Binder from coming back to the board. I think that's fine. I think there's nothing wrong with that. If you're wanting to not have to deal with a banish on your board, then you could just hold this for MTP, which is great. Or if you're more worried about your graveyard, then you want to go ahead and just Ash the White Binder when it's going to come back to the board, because at that point you won't have to really worry about it. Using Ogre on Lizardos is going to be the best here, because again, you want to just eliminate Link 2s, get your opponent away from a Link 3 possibility, right? And then Valor Imperium onto Dormouse. You could also hit the White Rabbit, because now everyone has to play TV11, because that's the only way to make White Rabbit a one-card combo again. DD Crow and Bell should always be used on Gaddock. This is going to be the most important stop. This is a card that they really want in rotation. But the other thing that you should think about, and this is really smart, is that if your opponent has already used Akihiron, if you've already seen them use it, which is always before they summon the combined creation, they'll use Akihiron, they'll add something back, usually like Memento Infusion. If you then just DD Crow on Res, the combined creation, your opponent's board's about to be real weak. So that's something that you should really keep in mind. This is a super heads-up play, and it catches a lot of people off guard. The other one's going to be ashing the Bone Party. Ogre is very strong in this matchup because you can hit like the Goblin, you can hit the Horse. A lot of the monsters, when they summon and they use the effect, they have to blow up a Memento that they control. So if you stop them from doing that, the card just kind of resolves without effect, right? They go summon Horse, Horse effect, you Ogre it. Wasted card. They go normal summon Goblin, Goblin effect, you Ogre it. Wasted card. It's really strong. The other one too is that if you have Ash, Valor, or Imperm, you can also go after the Creation King. I like this a lot. I think this is the best Ash target. I think the most generic one that's fine, that works with another hand trap, if you have like Valor and Ash, you want to like Valor the Horse, and then they go chain Bone Party, right? And then you chain Ash, and you just win the game. So these are always going to be very different situations, and it's never going to be like one scenario that I'm going to be showing you, right? Like, sometimes it's just like, yes, this is absolutely 100% of the time where this will always work, but there's always going to be some kind of variation. So, like, sometimes having, like, Ash Imperm, Ash Valor is really strong because you can stop something like a Bone Party. But also using Ash Valor Imperm on Creation King stops the triple dump, and that's usually the best one that your opponent's going to want to have, because that's usually going to be, like, Ekahiron, Combined Creation, and, like, Mace, right? So you want to make sure that you're stopping those from happening so your opponent can't get more advantage. You can also hit the field spell with Ogre, but I feel like hitting the names when they're trying to combo is almost just better. For Gem Knight, this is always like the blind second build, right? Using DD Crow in the fusion so they can't keep looping the card, or if you're more worried about Hollow Core being in a gate, then you can go ahead and just get rid of that preemptively. I really like Bell on Dispersion. I feel like this card just gains too much advantage, so making sure that you don't let your opponent do anything with this card is really important. Same with Ash on the Dispersion spell. Again, just another fusion that you want to stop. Ogre onto Scatter Fusion. Valor Imperm onto Nephrim, or you can hit the Phantom Quartz if you really want to. I feel like if you have double Valor, then both of these are really strong targets, but if my opponent starts with a Nephrim, I'm hitting that immediately with the Hand Trap. So this is always the deck that you just want to keep off of the Liger Dancer, and using Ogre or Bell in this matchup is going to be your best friend. You want to stop the Wolf, and you want to stop the Masquerade. They both work on both of these cards, and this is going to be the best Hand Trap spot here. Valor Imperm on Gold Leo. You can hit the Perfume Dancer if you have double Valor or Imperm, and I think that's perfectly fine too, but stopping Leo and Ashing Hound are going to be the other most impactful spots in this matchup. Then preemptively DD Crowing the Perfume. Don't let your opponent get to extra extenders like Wolf or the Tiger if they need that, right? Just get rid of it early. So I do hope this video did help you guys today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know down below in the comment section. I appreciate each and every one of you. Check out my Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and Instagram, and subscribe to the channel. Catch you all on the next one. Thank you.